So a good video is a series of stories. It's taking you through that series and telling you the story that the creator wants you to see or wants you to know about. One way to make that story just, more impactful and just have a little more bite to it is transitions between the scenes. There's a delicate balance between using just the right amount of transitions and using too many transitions or just going over the top, and you really need to fit the style video that you're creating. Transitions can be used in your primary footage and it can be used in your B-roll as well. Transitions can be very simple or they can be very elaborate. That being said, let me show you my 5 most used transitions when I'm creating videos and trying to tell stories.
First transition that I use fairly often is the zoom effect, and you can find a automatic one right under video transitions in the effects panel. Under zoom, there's a cross zoom. You drag that onto your edit, and here's what you're gonna get. Okay, not bad, but typically what I suggest when you're doing this zoom transition is try to go into things similar in color or similar in nature. You just want to, like here, I want to zoom into the ocean here. And as it transitions, I'm going to zoom out of the ocean on the left. It's going to be a little bit tricky because it's so far to the left in the frame, but I think we can make it happen. Let's go ahead and delete Premiere Pro's cross zoom. And what I want to do is I'm going to use my down key. That's going to take me right to the middle of this edit. Shift left arrow, and each shift left arrow takes you back 5 frames. So I'm 10 frames before the edit, which is usually somewhere between 10 and 15 frames is usually where I like to go ahead and install my transition. All right, so the way that I'm going to install this transition is with keyframes. And in the effects panel, I'm going to drop a keyframe at that 10 frames before the edit of the position and the scale. And now I'm going to go to the edit, make sure I'm on the clip, the correct clip. See how it's highlighted the second clip. I want to be on the first clip. There we go. All right, so now I'm just going to simply zoom into what I want to zoom into with the scale. So I'm going to click the 100, drag it to the right, and I'm going to go in probably 6. That's fine. Now I want to zoom into the water and not the horizon. The horizon is where the automatic cross zoom went into. I want to go into the water. So I'm going to click the y-axis of the position or the second number and kind of drag it to the left, and that's going to put me kind of into the ocean there. So now the frame is filled with the ocean on the zoom. I think I'm going to zoom this in just a little more. And now I'm going to adjust the Y just a little more until I'm pretty much just looking at water. Now this is going to happen fast. So this little umbrella here, not really a big deal. I could zoom in a little more if I want and then get rid of it. All right, so now we're going to work on the second clip. The second clip's going to be a little bit trickier, but I'm going to go ahead and start zoomed in to what I want to zoom into. And I'm going to have to zoom in more here. So I'm dragging the scale to the right. Now I'm going to use the x-axis, which is the first number in the position. And we're going to drag that to the right until we get to where we want to go. And that's going to be the water here. All right, so I'm going to zoom in a little more and move that x-axis just a little more. And I think what I'm going to do is you can see the shoreline is right here. So I'm going to adjust the y-axis a little bit to go down. So I'm dragging it to the left, and there we go. So what you're seeing now is kind of a haziness, and it's actually going to work out nicely because we're going to go into water and out of some haziness. So I think this is going to turn out nicely. All right, so what we're going to do is drop the keyframes. So we're going to hit the position keyframe and the scale keyframe. Now I'm going to slide to the right 15 frames or so. So shift right arrow, shift right arrow, shift right arrow, and I'm 15 frames into the second clip. The reason I'm going 15 and not 10 is I want to slow this one down just a hair because it's so hazy. All right, so now I'm going to reset my scale to 100. And I need to reset my X and Y axis to what they were originally. So 960, which is what they all come in at, and 540. And there we go. So let's take a look at this transition so far and see what we're working with. One more time. And you can see how that works. Now, this brings up a good point. When you're putting these transitions in, sometimes you need to do a little bit of adjusting or, additional feature or something to kind of bring it all together. On this transition, what I see is we need to put a Gaussian blur in this transition to make it really pop. The first clip is pretty clear, while the second clip has some haze. So this Gaussian blur is going to kind of bring things together a little bit. I'm going to drop the Gaussian blur on the first clip right at my keyframe from where we start zooming in. And my blurriness is going to be set to 0. I'm going to drop a keyframe on the blurriness or the Gaussian blur. And I'm going to scroll over to the edit, make sure I'm on the proper clip. And then I'm going to adjust my blurriness to, let's say 7 or 8. And now I'm going to go to the second clip and I'm going to do this. I'm going to do the same thing, but in reverse. So at this first keyframe, and I use my arrows here to make sure I land right on the keyframe, I'm going to go ahead and drop a keyframe for blurriness. And now I'm going to scroll over with shift right, shift right, shift right. Or you could just use this arrow key and that'll take you to the next keyframe. And we're going to adjust it to 0. And it's automatically going to drop that keyframe. Let's see what it looks like now. Okay, you see that element it added? It just kind of brought everything together a little better. Let's watch it one more time. And depending on what kind of video I'm doing, you can make that a little faster. I don't think you would want to go any slower. I think it's probably borderline, maybe a little too slow, but nothing too bad. All right, so that's my zoom effect. It's a little bit limited because you need to really use it on things that are similar in color or nature to really make it effective. So on this second set of clips, we have a bright daylight scene with a bridge, and it's going to transition into a nice darker moody scene with a sunset. And this transition really kind of pops when you're transitioning something like that, something high in contrast. And you could do this either way. You could go bright to dark, dark to bright, but usually something high in contrast is going to give you the best effect here. So it's going to be under your video effects, under your effects panel. It's going to be under keying, and it's going to be the Luma Key. I'm going to drop this on the first clip. Okay, so what this transition does is it requires you to stagger the clips. So I'm going to raise the first clip. I'm going to drag the second clip underneath of the first clip. You're going to drag it to wherever you're starting your transition. I'm starting mine at about 10 frames in, and you can make sure that you land right on the edit with the keyframes that you dropped here. All right, so we're right on the edit, and that's where I want to start the second clip underneath. And now I'm going to go to the last frame in the first clip. And now I'm going to make sure the first clip is highlighted. Now I'm going to adjust this threshold and cutoff to get the appearance I'm looking for, and watch what happens. Okay, you see how it's starting to bleed in there? I'm going to go back. Now I'm going to kind of bring it in. Now, that's not enough, and every clip is going to be different. So you're going to need to adjust these depending on, what the clips look like. So now I'm going to drag the cutoff up a little higher. And you can see kind of what happens there. Now, you could also adjust these differently. So you could have your, let's say you have your threshold as it is, but you only want the cutoff to be towards the second part or second half of the edit. So let's go ahead and take us all the way to where we want to see it. Right about there would be a good stopping point. Let's see what we have so far. Very nice. Okay, so back to that last clip. On this cutoff, we could drag it to the right a little, and that's gonna help kind of, highlight the threshold change here. And then the cutoff will kind of come in a little later. And you can play with the spacing of these so you get it just how you like it. Every set of clips is going to be different. I like that. That's a good one. Quick and easy. That's your Luma Key. Let's zoom into these two clips for our third transition. In our third transition, I just call it the circle, and I'll show you what I mean. We're going to take the first clip and stagger it on the track above, and then we're going to hit shift left, and that's going to put us 10 frames in. Now we're going to drag the bottom clip over to the cursor, so that starts our effect at 10 frames prior to the end of the first clip. All right, so highlighting the first clip, we're going to go over to our video effects, generate, and circle. We're going to drag the circle onto the first clip. And here you can see this is what we get. We need to adjust the settings over in the effect controls. And here's what we need to do. We need to take the radius and drag it down. But before I do that, I want to go ahead and then click the invert circle button. And then I want to click the blending mode and go to Stencil Alpha. All right, so now you can see the circles right here. And what we want to do is we want to take the radius to 0, but you can see what's going to happen. The circle is going to reveal the first clip, and I love a wonderful revealing, transition or clip. So I really like this transition. Let's take the radius to 0. Now, careful not to go back into negatives, because look what happens. It jumps to the other clip. So right at 0 is where you want to be for the radius, and then drop a keyframe. Now we're going to go to the edit. There we go. We're right at the end of this first clip, last frame. And so now what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and adjust the radius so that the circle comes and reveals the entire second clip. And let's take a look at how this came out. Beautiful. See that? One more time. Love that transition. All right, let's go to the next transition, which is, I call it the swipe. This one's pretty simple. I'm just going to go into the video effects, and under transition, there is a linear wipe. And this is the one that I like to use the most as far as these different types of transitions in this box. So I'm just going to drag it onto the first clip. Shift left key, that's 10 frames in. Going to drag this clip. Now we're properly aligned. Let's highlight the first clip, and there we see our linear wipe. Now, what I like to do is drag this to about, I don't know, somewhere right in the middle, 40-some%, whatever. And now you can adjust your angle. You can see kind of what's going to happen. The first clip is going to wipe away, and it's going to reveal the second clip. So you can take the angle of this, and you can go from, top left to bottom right, or the opposite. You can go bottom left to top right. But I tell you the truth, the one that I like the most is usually just from left to right at 90 degrees. Now, the main thing I like to do here is I like to make this line where these two clips are meeting or revealing. I like to blur it out. And right here with the feather effect, you can really kind of enhance that. And I like to do it quite a bit. So, 300 would be a good number for me. But adjust it so that, it's something you like if you're going to go ahead and do this. Now what we need to do is drag the transition complete back to 0, because we're right where we want to start the transition. So at the start of the transition, we want it to be 0. Drop a keyframe on the transition complete. Now we're going to go to the edit. Make sure we're on the very last frame of the edit on the first clip. And then we're going to go ahead and take the transition complete and drag it to the right until it gets to 100. And this is what we're left with. Beautiful. One more time. That's a nice one. I love that transition. I want to emphasize, it's really, really, really important on where you put these transitions and how you use them. You can't just throw them on the transition of any two clips. And this last transition is the most simple transition. It's really, really effective if you use it properly. What I think is the best way to use this transition is when you're going from one style of clip to a completely different style. And so if I have me here and I'm talking about, I don't know, something, and then I transition to a waterfall. All right. So In the video, it would be, me talking about waterfalls and I go to the waterfall. Typically, I would put some music on top of the track and just kind of blend it in. It's under video transitions, dissolve, and then dip to black. You've seen the dip to black thousands of times in your life, both on the movies, on TV, on YouTube. It's probably the most commonly used transition. So you just drag the dip to black right on the where the two clips combine. And then the one control that you have is the length or where you put the cut. You can put it at the center of the two clips. You can start it at the beginning of the second clip, or you can put it at the end of the first cut. For me, I usually like to keep it right in the center, and I usually like one that's longer. The more different the video clips are, like in this case, I have me sitting here talking, going into a waterfall. It's very different, and I think it benefits from a longer transition. So somewhere out there like that, it's a nice slower dip. So I really like that. I think that's a nice transition. It just really depends on how you use it and when you use it. All right, so let's recap, guys. The manual zoom, the Luma Key, the circle, the swipe left to right, and the dip to black. Sound is a big part of these transitions. If you don't do any sound design or sound effects with your transitions, you're just not going to be able to get the pop out of that transition that transition has the potential to get. And a really easy one is like this swipe or this left to right transition. I usually like some sort of whip or whooshing sound, and when on a clip like this, I'll drag that under there and I'll kind of center it on the transition. Maybe just back from the start a little bit, and then I narrow it in to only give me just a little bit of sound. Reduce the volume. And you see how much difference that makes. And usually you have some sort of music or voiceover going on top of the sound effect. So then it really, it really pays off and is very, very effective. So I encourage you to go ahead and you can put this time into these transitions. Go ahead and add the sound as well.